Daniel Sports Central, we go for our next schedule preview this offseason, and it's going to be over the Texas Longhorns, one of the most notable teams in the country as we look forward to 2023. This is a team that was 8-5 in 2022. Not a bad season for Texas, but based on the returning production of this team, plus the players that they got coming in, there is reason to believe that this team could very well be a dark horse national contender in 2023. We'll be talking about this team here today, going over the players that this team will be losing, who they'll be returning, and previewing their schedule for the first time this offseason. Let's get started with a quick recap of 2022. This team was once again 8-5 in 2022. Not a bad season. Started out the season with a dominant win over Louisiana Monroe. The next week, they had Alabama coming to town, and if you don't remember, heading into that Week 2 matchup, that was obviously a huge matchup of Week 2, but the Crimson Tide were far and away the favorite to win the national title heading into the season. You had Georgia, who wasn't far behind, Michigan, Ohio State as well, but Alabama in particular was definitely considered a major national contender. So for Texas in Week 2 to play right up next to Alabama was definitely impressive. The next week they beat UTSA 41-20. Then they had their brutal loss to Texas Tech. This one was definitely the most brutal loss of the season in overtime on the road. Texas Tech not considered a good team at that point in the season. Texas Tech had low expectations heading into 2022, so that loss definitely changed some perspectives on Texas and really lowered their ceiling, I'd say, as well. This team, it was going to be tough for them to be a national contender after that loss. But this team had 5 losses in the 2022 season. All of them came within 1 score. That is something to keep in mind as we look forward to 2023 as well. This team was better than their record showed, I would say, in 2022. They beat West Virginia then after their tough loss to Texas Tech. Also took care of Oklahoma 49-0. What a win that was. And they beat Iowa State then after that 24-21. Lost to Oklahoma State in Stillwater. This one was brutal as well. Lost it by a touchdown. They beat K-State 34-27. That just shows, going on the road, beating the eventual Big 12 champion in Kansas State. That was an impressive win there. And then they lost to TCU, who obviously made it to the national championship 17-10. This one was really tough as well. This was a huge opportunity for Texas in a night game at home against one of the top-ranked teams in the country in TCU. But in the end, they took another close loss. Beat Kansas 55-14, beat Baylor 38-27, and then we head into the postseason. This team played in the Alamo Bowl against Washington, took the loss 27-20, another 1-score loss. So, even if you flip 2 or 3, like you flip the Texas Tech game, you flip the Oklahoma State game, even TCU, which was a winnable one, this team is suddenly, they're suddenly 11-2 on the season. I could have very well seen this team as a 10 or 11 win team last year. They were good enough. It was just the 1-score losses really came back to bite. But looking forward to 2023 now, your roster preview going to next season. Quinn Ewers is coming back, the primary starter at quarterback in the 2022 season. 2,100 yards, 15 touchdowns, over 6 picks, and a 58% completion rate. Not terrible stats for him in 2022, considering he's still a younger quarterback. Hudson Card is transferring away. He is headed to Purdue, so he is not in the quarterback situation, but you know who is. Arch Manning, 5-star quarterback who's been such a big name throughout his high school career, a 5-star. He's coming into Texas, and this is going to be an interesting quarterback situation for that reason. I wouldn't be surprised if Quinn Ewers at least started in the beginning parts of the season. Maybe we see Manning rotate in once in a while and maybe even take over the starting position. That's a possibility. And Quinn Ewers is still a solid quarterback. So it's going to be fun to see what happens there in this quarterback situation, but the future looks very bright for this Longhorns team. You do lose Robinson, your top running back, who had a huge impact on this team this past season, a star running back. He put up nearly 1,900 yards, 20 touchdowns of offense in the 2022 season. Nothing short of outstanding for him. You lose him. You also lose Rashawn Johnson, who put up just right around 700 yards and 6 touchdowns. So the backfield is one of my main concerns heading into 2023. Losing Robinson is obviously huge. It's going to be tough to replace him. But based on the quarterback situation, the receiving core overall looks good. Xavier Worthy coming back, Jordan Whittington coming back. You also return your top tight end, your third in receiving, and Jatavion Sanders. So things look pretty good for this offense. It's just the backfield. Gotta replace a couple of guys in there. but otherwise not too concerned. You lose 2 on the defensive line, 2 linebackers and 2 in the secondary, so you do lose a couple of starters on defense. The offensive line is returning most everybody, but we are losing a few or a couple of guys to the transfer portal, so something to keep in mind there. But I mean, this team has got excellent potential. The depth is outstanding. Recruiting wise, this team is the 3rd team in the country when it comes to recruiting ratings. So I mean, it looks like this team has got a bright future. The transfer portal, though, this team does lose more than they gain, and we'll get into that in a sec. But this team, are they a major national contender heading into 2023? And I'll say this. You look at the Big 12, what TCU did in 2022 was pretty remarkable. They were expected to only get 5 to 7 wins in 2022. I mean, 7 wins tops, really. And so for that team to go undefeated and get to the national championship, they did lose the Big 12 title game, but for them to get to the national championship was, I mean, that's as big of a surprise team as we've seen in a long time. I'm saying if TCU can do it, Texas can, without a doubt, do it as well. I mean, they've got a tougher schedule in 2023, but I think this team is very much a team that could be a big national contender as we look forward to 2023. Your transfer portal and recruiting, Hudson Card, once again, he's off to Purdue. Donai Mitchell's coming in, receiver from Georgia, so you add some depth to the receiving core there. You lose 4 offensive linemen here, all to different schools. Edge rusher Ogufo is off to LSU. You do lose him, and then Prince Dorba is off to Arizona State. So you lose a couple of edge rushers there. Devin Richardson is off to Washington State, linebacker. You got Gavin Holmes coming in, defensive back from Wake Forest, and then Catalan, safety from Arkansas. So you add a couple to the defense there. You lose Jameer Johnson, defensive back to Indiana. J.D. Coffey is off to San Diego State, and then Ibrahim, defensive back, is in the transfer portal as well. Once again, recruiting, though, is nothing short of just great for this team. They're 3rd nationally. They got 4 5-stars coming in, 14 4-stars, and they're the top team in the Big 12. So, I mean, this is an outstanding year for recruiting. There's really no excuse for this team not to be a big national contender, or at least a college football playoff contender in the years to come. Now, looking at your schedule going into next season, this is a tougher schedule. Looking forward to 2023. Obviously, your non-conference schedule does include a showdown against Alabama. This year it is in Tuscaloosa, so you don't have it at home like you did in 2022. But overall, I mean, this is the first year where you got Houston and BYU in the Big 12. That makes things interesting. Obviously, you got UCF and Cincinnati in there as well, but Texas do not play either of them. You got Rice in week 1, Alabama in week 2, which is a huge matchup. I mean, you got 2 national contenders there, I think, at least heading into the season. Alabama's always up there, and Texas, I think, could be. You got Wyoming in week 3, Baylor on the road in week 4. You got Kansas coming to town on September 30th, and then Oklahoma in Dallas, and what is a huge game there. I think Oklahoma next season should very well be improved. I see them right around 9 to 10 wins. I do think they'll be better in the 2023 season. Then you got a bye week, and then you got your 2 games against the new Big 12 teams. You got Houston on the road, and then BYU coming to town. And then you got Kansas State defending Big 12 champions on the 4th of November. TCU on the road, Iowa State on the road, and then Texas Tech at home to finish out the regular season. So that said, looking at the first month of action here, Rice, easy win there. Should have no problem against them. And then Alabama on the road, this is a really intriguing matchup. You got Alabama, who's going to be having a younger quarterback in there. I mean, Texas does as well. Quinn Ewers is still a young quarterback, and obviously Arch Manning is just entering the system. But Alabama on the road, with it being a road game, I do think the Crimson Tide, I'll favor them right now. That's a game that I could see Texas. I mean, they competed right up next to them in 2022. I don't see why they can't in 2023. Then you got Wyoming, easy win. Baylor and Kansas, I'll put both of these in yellow, but I will be favoring Texas in both. Baylor on the road, Bears just, I don't know about them heading into 2023. They were a disappointment in 2022. I did call that one. I said this team was going to go 6-6. They ended up going 6-6 in the regular season. So the Bears, I mean, it's on the road. I'll favor you there. Kansas as well. I'm just putting it in yellow because Kansas is a team that was improved for sure in 2022, and I could still see them being good in 2023. So your ceiling's 5-0 heading into October, floor is 3-2. I'd say 4-1 is a pretty reasonable estimate heading into October just because of that Alabama game. But for October, you got Oklahoma. I do think I'll favor you there right now. Oklahoma next season I do think will be improved. But based on how Texas beat them last season, I mean, I think the Longhorns, I do want to favor them there. Plus, I think Texas is a team that should very well be one of the top teams in the Big 12, if not the top team. I mean, I think Texas could be my favorite to win the Big 12 heading into next season, just based on how I do think this team was better than their 8-5 record last season. And with the returning production and everything, it looks really good for the Longhorns. But then you got Houston and BYU in back-to-back games, two of the new Big 12 teams. I think you take care of both of them. Houston on the road, just because it's a road game, maybe could have put that game in yellow. But for BYU being at home, I think you take care of them. So ceiling's 8-0, still undefeated. Heading into November, the floor is 5-3. I'd say 7 wins. 6-7 wins is a pretty good estimate heading into November. And November is a challenging month for the first 2 games at least, K-State and TCU. I'll favor you in both of those games. I do think both teams do fall off a bit going into next season. And while they could, I do think Texas could lose one of those games. I will be favoring them in both right now. Then you got Iowa State on the road. They're just one of the worst teams in the Big 12 right now. So I'll favor you there. And then against Texas Tech, I'll put that in yellow as well. Even though both Iowa State and Texas Tech are very winnable games, Texas Tech definitely was improved last season, and they're a team that I could see being a dark horse in the conference in 2023. So in the end, I've got the ceiling at 11-1 for this team. The floor is 8-4. It's just too difficult of a schedule to put the ceiling at 12-0 for this team. I do think they take a loss at some point, but this team should, I mean, there's no excuse for this team not to be a contender in 2023. All the signs point to this team being definitely at least a legitimate contender in the Big 12, and who knows, at the end of the day, they could definitely be a college football playoff dark horse. But let me know your thoughts in the comments below on Texas, and I appreciate you guys all watching as always. Stay tuned for more from All Sports Central. Catch you on the next one.